good evening, and a warm welcome to all our viewers for today's Taz Talk. I'm Lisa. I am the former editor for Southwest Asia and North Africa at Taz, and I'll be your host for this panel talk tonight. And tonight's a special night in Israel because for the fifth time in 43 months, elections are being held. And under these circumstances, I'm all the more happy that we have two great guests tonight that took the time to come on here, which is Samantha Levy and Roy Yellin for our Taz talk under the headline, Israel is voting again. What now? So I'm going to start by introducing you, Samantha. You are an activist for The Home JLM, which is an organization, a civil organization that aims to facilitate dialogue and coexistence in the West Bank between Jewish Israeli settlers and the Palestinian community there. And our other guest is Roy, who is the director of public outreach for B'Tselem, an NGO, an Israeli NGO that has claimed in the past and has greeted US President Joe Biden when he visited Israel and the Palestinian territories with a banner that said, "Mr. President, this is apartheid." So I think we're going to have an interesting discussion tonight. And before we jump in and before I give a quick overview of the objectives, what I would like this talk to be, so that you, the viewers, can know what to expect. I would like to ask both of you, did you cast your ballots today?
Sure.
I actually have not yet gone to cast my ballot. Maybe this will impact my voting decision, but no, I'm going later this evening.
I did it first thing in the morning at 7:30. I was already there.
Nice.
So you don't just have different opinions, you also have different, let's say, times of day, preferred times of day, a night owl and an early bird, basically. And so before we jump in more, I would like to, as I said, give a quick overview of what I would like to discuss today. And I would like the three of us, and especially the two of you, to take a closer look or to show us Israel basically under a magnifying glass in light of the elections, but also in light of the accusation that keeps on coming that Israel is an apartheid state. And I would like also to focus on how this conflict or that discussion impacts the elections and the government to come and what both of you expect for that. And in preparation for this talk, I asked both of you for quotes. And usually I'd say ladies first, but Roy's quote is a bit more lighthearted and funny, so I thought perhaps this would make a better introduction. You told me, I quote, "I'm not hugely optimistic about the election. So personally, I hope the results will make it possible to preserve the Tel Aviv privileged liberal bubble I live in for a while longer." I would just like you to explain what went through your head.
Well, on my daily work, I face the injustice of Israeli apartheid. We document violations of human rights in the occupied territories in Gaza and the West Bank, including East Jerusalem. But personally, I live in Tel Aviv, and I'm surrounded with a modern city, very open society, fantastic beach, good life. And I understand that this is like a result of me being Jewish citizen in a privileged Jewish society. But I understand also that this kind of dichotomy, this having On one hand, a regime that discriminates on ethnic and religious lines, and on the other hand, having a seemingly like modern open society is impossible. So I know it has an expiration date, and I hope this expiration date is not tonight when we get the results of the elections.
When you speak of an expiration date, what is your main fear for tonight? We already understand that the extreme right, something which for German audience would be like better explained as like a Jewish AfD, is going to make a significant gains in the ballots. This is like an open fundamentalist religious fascist party, which is supposed to be part of the next government, perhaps. But even if not in the government, it's definitely going to be represented in the parliament, and the hateful ideology is going to be even more present. And this will result in like measures to our freedom, to our ways of life, to like what I defined it as a bubble, but the bubble is really like about to be bursting on all of us. You said fascist and Jewish AfD. As an explanation, AfD is the far-right party here in Germany. So that's a lot of strong words, a lot of accusations. And I think you, Samantha, would disagree. And I will read your quote. I hope that in this round of elections, Israeli politicians will find a way to display authentic leadership and to create unity for a government that isn't against the very existence of Israel. Same question, could you tell me what went through your head coming to this question or this answer?
Sure, I think, I think it's very clear, just like, we see it around the world, that in Israel at this moment, we're lacking leadership altogether. And even more so authentic leadership. Every party in its own way has, committed corruption in its own way. Every party does not, it's supposed to be representing a certain population within Israeli society, but often they're not finding ways to be able to come together and to unite a government which will really suit the needs and be a lasting one. We've seen, the past governments have aligned with parties that are the complete opposite than what they stand for. And we, at the time, had hope maybe would help balance out, I guess you would say, like, make these ideas less extreme, because we would find a medium. But nevertheless, we saw the opposite was true. We saw that, nothing was able to be agreed upon. And these elections puts the country itself in a standhold in regards to budgeting for nonprofits and for a lot of important work that is done within the government. So every single time that we don't have a government or that we have to re-elect, it's not only millions of shkalim, the new Israeli shekel, but it's also a lot of money that's put on hold and a lot of work that's put on hold. So it's definitely a very practical way, very much disheartening. But also at the same time, theoretically saying that you have, as Roy said, you have people who are definitely causing toxicity within society based off of certain things that they are yelling out to society, which very much delegitimizes the very existence of, let's say, Palestinians or Israelis within Israeli society. And that is unacceptable. And the fact that that party will probably be within the Knesset, some people argue that it will help balance things out. I see it as very toxic, and it's very scary as well. And yet at the same time, I also would not want to see the Arab parties re-elected and in government, because the Arab parties do not actually represent the Palestinians of today. It's people who are very much against the existence of the very state and have committed, I guess you can say, even treason in different ways. So I don't understand what they're doing in the government. I would much rather see Arabs who do work to create more of a constructive reality and who do work to come together to just talk about what needs to be done. Just the conversation itself, moving it forward, is huge, and it's very much needed. So that's more of what I hope to see. It's not necessarily a forecast. It's more of where I'm positioned politically, what my aspirations are, you know?
So you do also believe in a way that there is an expiration date, but for you, this is a positive outlook. It's something, an expiration date, basically, of an unsuccessful past.
Right. So the expiration date that Roy was talking about was specifically, let's say, like the liberal democratic, I guess you would say, views and lifestyle that we see in Tel Aviv. I don't think that Tel Aviv should cease to exist. And I don't think that's going to be the reality from the upcoming elections. But I'll give you an example of things that can explain maybe what Roy was talking about. We're talking about creating a train that would potentially be running on Shabbat and passing through different neighborhoods of ultra-Orthodox communities. And you have a lot of ultra-Orthodox communities that are very against the idea of the train running on Shabbat altogether. So if it does run on Shabbat, that's a big win for, you know, the liberal democrats of Tel Aviv. If they don't, then they see it as not just a standstill, but maybe even a step back. I don't see it as a step back. I don't think that's necessarily the topic we should be focusing on right now, but I don't think that the Tel Aviv will cease to exist in this very upcoming election, nor the liberal democracy that we have today. And I would love to talk about, you know, my views on liberal democracy in Israel, but maybe I'll wait until we get further on in the conversation.
Why would you like to directly comment?
Yes, I would like to directly comment that it's not for you as a Jewish citizen to say, to criticize the choice and decisions and votes of Palestinian citizens here, but it's kind of telling. This talk about treason and about the existence of the threat of the state, and seeing people who live here as a threat to your very existence and identity, which I think this is the toxic thing. Those people live here. They deserve every measure of equality, and they deserve to choose their own representatives. But even that, this kind of division here of the political map according to lines of ethnicity, and this thing about Arab parties and Jewish parties, is in itself something which I think for a country which defines itself as democratic is very problematic. I think if we kind of make those divisions political divisions rather than ideology, decisions about economy and life, and this is a problem. And this in itself, even without talking about the millions of Palestinians that were under closure today and could not get out of their villages and towns because there was Israeli elections, and they don't get to vote. So in this, like in this very small area, there are roughly 15 million people living. Half of them are Jews and half of them are Palestinians. 5.3 of those people, 5.3 million, are not voting in the elections that decide their future. And this is certainly not democratic.
I think we are. Sorry, please give a quick reply, and then I'm going to lead over to the next topic.
Yeah, so I just want to clarify, because Roy, I think you misunderstood what I was saying. I wasn't delegitimizing the existence of Palestinian identity, nor their voting rights, nor my, it was not at all expressing that they should not have representation in the government. The very opposite. I was just expressing that the current leadership, Arab individuals, people who identify themselves as Arabs that are in the government, are not actually representing their people as they should. And I'm saying specifically that the parties that are in the government at this specific time are very much against the very existence of the state, and have, as I said, committed, I guess you can call them, acts of treason. And therefore, I do not understand what they are doing within the government, since they have acted and voiced their very vocal opinions of how they want to see this, the how do you say, removing of the Jewish states. And I'm just saying that I would rather see Arab parties that would represent the Palestinian identity, the Arabs that we have within Israel that have voting rights, that they would actually represent their political opinions, and that they wouldn't fight against the very existence of the state. And I think that's a very basic and democratic value that everyone should hold. So I think that you misunderstood me on that part.
I think we're already in the middle of the other big topic that is relevant to us tonight. And I think this is the topic of Palestinian, Arab, Israeli voters. This is a coin that has, I think, two argumentative sides. On one side, it is an argument to say, if Arab Israelis are allowed to vote, this cannot be apartheid, because apartheid, and I just brought along the definition by Amnesty International, which says a system of prolonged and cruel discrimination or discriminatory treatment by one racial group of members of another with the intention to control the second racial group. This is just the definition by Amnesty, and I think it is the one that was most commonly reported earlier this year. So I chose to read that one. So one side of this argumentative coin is that if you are allowed to vote as an Arab Israeli, if you're allowed to choose your own fate or your own, at least contribute to that, this cannot be apartheid because you do have civil rights. On the other side of this argumentative coin is that if you live in the West Bank, you are or also in Gaza, you are certainly affected by Israeli politics, but you can't vote. And I think this coin can be flipped either ways. So I think, Roy, if you'd like to go first, and I would love to hear your opinion on it. And then I would ask Samantha too.
Okay, so first of all, in regards to Palestinian citizens who do have the right to vote, their right to vote is actually curtailed. They don't have total freedom. And unlike what my colleague here said before, Palestinians, in order to compete, to be eligible, and to become a party that can compete to the Israeli parliament, they actually have to recognize Israel as a Jewish state. This is mandatory. If you don't do that, you can't get elected. So in fact, they have to recognize the principle of Jewish supremacy just in order to be eligible to be part of the parliament. So this kind of saying that they are trying to destroy the country or as a Jewish state is in itself like it's not true. But we have to also take into account the millions of other Palestinians that Israel has no intention of stopping its control over, and they don't get to decide in what their life is going to be. And if we're looking at apartheid, at the definition of apartheid, then the aim is like to maintain this control. If we want to look at another way of looking at things, the perception that this is occupation, well, occupation is supposed to be temporary, but after almost 56 years, we know that this is not the case. There are hundreds of thousands of Israelis that live all over the West Bank. So Israel is very clear about its intention to maintain the control there. And then the question comes to mind, how do you define the situation where there are millions of people that have no civil and political rights, and the situation is protracted, it's ongoing for dozens of years? And our answer is that this is exactly the definition of apartheid.
Samantha, I'm sure you have some food for thought for us.
So first of all, I don't like any like sweep, comments or statements where we are generalizing or when we're going from like a very specific detail in regards to Arab Palestinian rights to then go and say that they have no rights and that they have no ability to be an active citizen or to be political in any way. Just the fact that we've had a Arab judge who decided to put away, who decided on grounds to put away a Jewish prime minister and a Jewish president just goes to show that they have rights, that they have the ability to be involved politically just as much as they'd like, that they have the ability to be an active citizen, and that they also have the ability to fight for their rights in the legal system, which is protective of their rights. So in apartheid, if we were using that language, which first of all was created specifically for South Africa, and it's just an inappropriate term to be placing on here, and I can explain later why. It's just, you're explaining here that in South Africa specifically, there was no way for people of color to fight against the system and to fight against any prejudice or racial discrimination that they had at the time. And the system that we have here in Israel is the complete opposite. There are sets of laws and sets of systems that allow Palestinians, specifically Israeli Arabs, Amnesty calls Israeli Arabs Palestinians, to fight against any prejudice or racism that they may have. Now, the bureaucracy is horrible, and I think we should all acknowledge that. I, as a Ola Khadasha, someone who came from the United States to Israel, any single time I want to file anything, it's a nightmare, and the bureaucracy is just so bad that nothing gets done. So I can understand, of course, the distress and the frustration that anyone may have when they do experience prejudice and racism, to first of all bring it within themselves to actually be able to do something about it psychologically and emotionally and mentally, but then also to like bring themselves to do the logistical work and the bureaucratic work. It's a headache. So let's just acknowledge the fact that, Israel has a lot of growth and a lot needs to be done in order for people to be able to file anything more effectively, but the system is there and it's put in place. And to say that they have no rights is just deflaming and demonizing the state within itself. I do want to say that just because someone signs on a piece of paper that says that they acknowledge that the state of Israel is a Jewish state, it doesn't mean that they actually believe what they're signing. I can sign anything and then not actually put it into practice, right? But the matter of the fact is that just because they're signing that paper, and when they go against what they believe, there are no laws that stop politicians from acting against the Israeli state. And to say that, the very existence of Israel, which is specifically a Jewish state, and it was acknowledged that that's exactly what it is that it would be from its very existence, is Jewish supremacy. Like, that's just, I think that's very anti-Semitic. I know that you're a Jew, but I think it's very anti-Semitic to say that wanting a Jewish state is Jewish supremacy. So it's just like an inappropriate statement. But essentially, like, let's just acknowledge the fact that Palestinians do have their rights to vote. They do have the rights to make a difference. They do have the rights to become politicians, to work as lawyers and judges and whatever it is that they may be. 30% of pharmacists in Israel are Arabs. 30% of doctors are Arabs. Israelis have the rights to go on in the army. Like, I can make so many arguments that show you that any Palestinian or Israeli Arab, however language you want to use, if they would like to be a member of society, they are invited to. Does that mean that they don't experience prejudice, that there aren't like policies that I think need to be improved on? Doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, and it doesn't mean that there isn't room for improvement. There definitely is room for improvement, but just like we have everywhere in the world, there are policies that are unfortunately also racist, which is not specifically racist, but it's de facto racist. It's something that's more passive. It happens everywhere in the world. It happens in the US, where you have school districts that are not at all invested in. You have plenty of resources that are available to the state, and they choose to invest their resources in the neighborhoods that have money rather than in the marginalized communities that are specifically Black communities. Like, there are a lot of systems that are put in place around the world that are passively discriminatory, but like specifically having discriminatory laws and prejudices that are active and not passive. I would like to hear of specific ones, but I don't know of any. So maybe you can bring that to my attention.
Okay, let's call it the nation state basic law that enshrines Jewish supremacy as a constitutional principle of Israeli, of the Israeli sort of constitution or constitution to be. So in fact, there is legislation that discriminates openly Palestinians. I can also talk about immigration. I can talk about allocation of land and the tricks that the Israeli regime has doing in order to take lands from Palestinians in all the area within 1948 border and in 1967 and give it to Jews at the expense of Palestinians who were sometimes even residing on that very land. So there are many, many examples, both on the legal aspect and both on the practice and you know what you term as like bureaucracy and passive racism, but it's certainly not passive. It's very explicit and it's enshrined in the Israeli legislation. The other thing that I would like to say is that racism is not something that the individual has to overcome. It's the responsibility of the society to tackle and to eliminate. So, and we as a human rights organization, we're not looking at individuals, we're looking at systems. We're looking at laws, we're looking at orders that the army is giving. We're not looking into, you know, the ability of one individual to withstand all that and saying like, well, if they want to fight it, they have a way. That's not the way the world should work. On the other, and just like finally about a Jewish state. Well, Israel, the term Jewish state was introduced only in 1992. In the, you know, the founding document in our, you know, independence declaration, it's very clearly stated that Israel will be the state of all its citizens and the Jewish people. So there's a way to define the state in a way which is not discriminatory, that is still providing a safe haven for Jews, and anti-Semitism is a problem around the world, and Jews do deserve to have a place where they can feel safe and flee persecution. But it shouldn't be a discriminatory place to the people that were already here before some of those Jews came here. And democratic state demands to be the state of all its citizens. And this is something that Palestinians cannot even demand. A party that asks for that very, very basic you know, principle of democracy, to have that the state is equal and that all citizens are equal. This is something which is actually prohibited by the Israeli legislation, both by the basic law for the parliament, Chok Yesod HaKnesset, and the nation state law.
Okay, so I'm assuming, Lisa, that I can just respond automatically.
Yes, just one quick note, because you said previously you would like to explain why apartheid is an inappropriate term. If you could just do that in 2 sentences, perhaps, and then you can go right back to what you just wanted to say. And sorry for interrupting your train of thought now.
Sure. Okay, so again, apartheid was specifically created for South Africa. I was talking about the system, you know, the South Africa itself, who viewed, unfortunately, people of color, specifically Black individuals, as less than human. And therefore, they did everything that they could to divide society and to really discriminate against them in every way, shape, or form. That was translated into basic areas of having different places for people to use the restroom, to use water fountains, and to a very high, you know, basic also, but more a macro level, that no one could be a member of society serving in government or serving partially someone in government. The jobs were limited, their rights were limited, but it was done in a very oppressive way, which was very intentional, very specific, and they were very clear about their intentions. So this is taking the very extreme, like a very, very extreme reality, and taking the suffering of the Black individuals that they suffered apartheid within South Africa, and then equating that to what is happening here in Israel. So it's one, delegitimizing the experience of Black individuals in South Africa, and two, it's saying that it's, everything is the same essentially, which is wrong. Everything is not the same. Again, perhaps there are passive discriminatory or prejudice laws that exist within Israel that do not specify discrimination or racism. But I'm sure that it does exist, as it does in every other country around the world. And as Roy said, it is the responsibility of society for us to fight up against that. We cannot expect that, the government is just going to turn from one day to the next to be a perfect utopian society. It's our social accountability, it's our social responsibility to move things forward and to make things happen. And so that's why nonprofit work, grassroots movements, etc., are so essential to the conflict, this specific conflict, but anything around the world that requires, moving and advancing issues within society. So the intention, I definitely applaud. The rhetoric I disagree on. So going back into the specific laws that Roy touched on, I would like to explain what they are for people who don't necessarily know what they are. So we have what's called the immigration rights, which Roy mentioned is discriminatory. We're talking specifically about the law of return, which was created with the creation of the state, the establishment of the state. It's a law that's saying that any Jew who essentially, what is a Jew? That is a whole conversation. But in this context, it's specifically anyone that is considered Jewish according to Hitler. Okay, so Hitler considered the mother, the father, the grandmother, right? The grandmother as well, the grandfather. Anyone who was considered Jewish by Hitler has a right to return because they experienced different tragedies within their families, because they were targeted as Jews specifically. They should be given a safe haven, which is the state of Israel. Okay, that's one of the very reasons why we have a Jewish state. So essentially, this law is saying that anyone who comes they're given rights, they're given percentage off in different taxes to allow them to integrate well into society, et cetera, et cetera. Now, this law is not given for Palestinians who left Israel during the war. We have Palestinians that left either because Jordan told them, okay, if you leave the state, we'll wipe the Jews off of the map from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, and you'll come back to your homes and you'll reclaim the land as your own. And other people left because they were honest, they were honestly displaced. They, experienced atrocities within the villages that they were living in. They were living during a period of war, and they had to flee for safety reasons. So the law of return is saying that specifically Jews can return, but Palestinians of the diaspora who left at the time are saying, we also want to go back to Israel. We want to go back home, right? They consider Israel, or Palestine, as they say, their home, and they have this desire to be able to come back. So due to the politics and the growing population of Palestinians that we have to this day, I have no doubts that the main reason why this is not allowed at the time for Palestinians to come back to their home is because there is a understanding that the moment that we bring them back, this means that the society will be at one point very soon, like 5-10 years into the future, a majority Palestinian states, which means that essentially, if we're a truly democratic state, according to the system that we have today, that the governments can be switched over and the Jewish state can cease to exist. So that's the fear that Jews have in regards to bringing them back. And another fear, and I'm just explaining societal fears, I'm not saying that this is necessarily the government, what I'm about to say, but a lot of people experience prejudice, I'm sure, towards Palestinians due to the ongoing intifadas that we've experienced and the terrorism that we experience day to day within the land. And their concern is at the moment that we bring more Palestinians back into Israel, that means that it would cause even more unrest within the land. It would cause more terrorist attacks and more of what they call, like what Palestinians call it, a uprising. So that is the concern that Israelis hold. But the law of return was specifically put into place to allow Israel, a Jewish state, to be a safe haven to anyone who wants to come live here. And we see that now in today's environment, in today's culture, what's going on around the world, unfortunately, it's needed more than ever. We're seeing an uprising of anti-Semitism, which is also anti-Zionism hiding as anti-Semitism, and people are being essentially pushed out of their communities and are scared for their lives. And we say never again, but nothing is being done in the world to stop that from happening. So it's essential that as a Jewish state, we should allow that to happen. But this is one of the arguments that's used as why Israel is certain Israeli laws that are considered racist. It's not racism. It's more focusing just on the needs of the people, which is allowing them to come home and have a safe haven. Of course, there was also the mention of land being taken away by Palestinians or Israeli Arabs. It's not discriminatory because the same happens on the other side. Land and homes are destroyed and taken away also on the Israeli side, the Jewish Israeli side. And it's something that needs to be worked on.
Can you give some data on that? Can you provide some data on that? Because we do have data on that.
You want me to search it?
Yeah, like you're saying, it's like you're two-siding it. You're saying it happens on two sides. Is it like really symmetrical?
Of course. Yeah, let me show you in a second. We're talking about within Israel, whether we're talking about within Israeli borders, or you want specifically also within the Judea and Samaria?
West Bank and
I'm talking about, okay, great.
Both.
I just want
so
to,
you're welcome to, Lisa.
Quickly interject here because the wording here is interesting, of course. You, Samantha, say Judea and Samaria, and you, Roy, say the West Bank. I think for many people in Germany, it's not clear why the wording you use is different. Perhaps you would like to just each really in one sentence, because we are progressing fast on time, to explain why each of you uses each term.
Okay, just on part, I just have to quickly say that on apartheid being like specifically created for South Africa, that's not true. There's 2 international treatises regarding apartheid, defining apartheid. One is the international treaty, UN treaty from the 70s against apartheid as a form of regime. And the second is the Rome Statute that built the International Criminal Court. Apartheid is also a crime against humanity that the International Criminal Court in The Hague is supposed to indict for. So it's not specifically created for South Africa. It's also a term and a crime defined in international law. Regarding the West Bank and Judea and Samaria, so the West Bank is the definition of that we use because it's an occupied area that Israel conquered in the 1967 war. And Judea and Samaria is the term that is used by Israeli Jews that want to keep that land and to deny the existence of the form of military control over that land, essentially annexing it into the state of Israel.
Okay, so obviously I'll define that differently. And I think that it's very important to acknowledge the fact that just because someone has a love for the land does not mean that they are denying the existence of the other. I think that it's very possible, and it should be encouraged that the conversation allows both peoples to continue their love and appreciation for the land. And therefore, naturally, that puts us in a common denominator. We share something in common, and we should be appreciative towards the other because we share that love for the land, right? So I use specifically the terms Judea and Samaria because those are the indigenous names of the land. That's what we were using during specifically Judea is the kingdom that we had in Israel many centuries ago. And Samaria is also a different region of Israel that was called, like, you have also Samaritans who are living in a certain area of Samaria. They're in Har Gerizim, and they share a similar history to what we have. So it's just a matter of it being the indigenous names. And so in Hebrew, we say, Shamwan, Yehuda. In English, because people have these conversations in an international, platform, people will normally bend back into the term West Bank. And West Bank, I think that falls back into the terminology of settlers, like colonialists, causing us to be perceived as Eastern Europeans that are not native to the land, that we do not have any connection to the land of Israel. We simply came here because that's what we were given, and that's not the case. We are one of the indigenous peoples to the land. I also acknowledge Palestinians as an indigenous people to the land. We can talk about who was here first and who was here second, but that doesn't matter to me. They've been living here for generations, and that should be acknowledged.
Thank you. I am sure there would be many more points that we can discuss just on this specific matter. But since it's still election night, and since I was just posed a question by one of our viewers, I would like to revert back to that topic a bit, although I think this is really an incredibly important and interesting conversation, and I hope we can continue that some time in the future. And a question posed to me is, which role do left-wing or socialist parties play in the current situation? And we already brushed upon that at the very beginning. And so I will just give that question to you. What do you think these parties these parties, what role do these parties play in today's situation?
Well, essentially, they created it to be entirely honest. The Israeli left was totally complicit in creating the system that brought us to this day, and created the base for the apartheid regime that resulted out of it. Israeli politicians from the Labour Party or from its predecessors, like the various party that is now the Israeli Labour Party, created the first settlements and allowed them to expand and develop. And they were also part of governments that continued the status quo. In fact, also the last government in which the two progressive parties, Meretz and the Labour, were part of, the situation has been going on, even exacerbated, without any type of challenge. So I think the camp of control of maintaining this regime over Palestinian is kind of the consensus of Israeli politics. It's not really challenged. And it's only challenged by Palestinian parties and to a certain degree, the Meretz party. I think now it might be even more strongly there because they have a new chair this is like one of her major, major things that she promotes. But it's the fringe. The mainstream of Israeli politics is the maintenance of control over Palestinians. And that's not about to change no matter what the results tonight are going to be, whether Lapid is going to have, the ability to form a coalition or whether Benjamin Netanyahu.
Okay, so I'll just jump right in. Yeah, I of course agree with everything that was just said. It's really important to acknowledge the fact that the status quo has been remained for way too long. And the only solutions that have been brought to the table, in my opinion, are not solutions in any way, shape, or form. They do not reach the aspirations of either peoples. It doesn't suit the culture of the Middle East. It doesn't suit the culture of Israelis as Jews, and also Palestinians. We're both very much tribal people, naturally, authentically, in our very essence. But essentially, yeah, people on the right are definitely not moving things forward in regards to seizing the conflict. Socialists specifically are focusing more on the quality of rights within Israel, for the underdogs, I guess you can say. Specifically, you can say people who have disabilities, people who are in lower socioeconomic backgrounds. It's very much it's an incredible state in that sense. There's so much government support in that sense. And then on the left, specifically, it's a lot of criticism, a lot of push for the two-state solution, a lot of push for, I guess, what I would call demonizing the state, specifically from the Meretz party. But then there are other parties on the left that are really wanting to make what I see Israel another like a US in the Middle East, another like Western democratic country in the US, and trying to take away its Jewish identity in a sense, in a way which is very passive, through funding, through different collaborations and partnerships. And yet at the same time, there's a lot of good that's done by that. We have a lot of strategic alliances through those partnerships. But at the very essence, I don't think that that's what we need as a society in regards to solving the conflict. I don't think that solving the conflict is going to be done by us having to remove our Jewish identity within the state. If anything, it's the opposite. By being true to our identity and by allowing Palestinians to be true to their identity and focusing on the common denominators and the common ground, can we really ally as a people? But nothing is being done politically to move things forward, and that's the most disappointing thing. So it's up to us as a people to do, again, like grassroots work and work with different nonprofits and collaborate as much as we can as citizens. That's our social responsibility, and that hasn't, a lot of Israelis haven't got that memo. So I hope that that will be trickled down very soon.
I do hope that you stop saying that people that think differently from you are traitors and disloyal to the state. I think that's a fascist statement, and you should apologize for it.
So I did not say that.
Yes,
Okay,
you did. You
all,
just claimed that Meretz party, those people are treason.
I didn't say that they're traitors.
And you also said that about in the very beginning of this talk about Palestinian politicians, and I think this is very toxic. So you're talking about acceptance and coexistence, but in fact your language is language of hate and racial discrimination. And delegitimizing your political opponents, and that's unacceptable. And I have to say it and call it out, because I think this is very, very dangerous for democratic discourse.
So first of all, I would like to respectfully say that I did not call anyone. I did not call the Meretz party a traitor. And what I said specifically about the Palestinian parties that are in the government, I said that they have committed treason, and that's an issue. So I don't understand what they are doing in the government. And I said I would like to see other Palestinian parties, other Arab parties that do represent the aspirations and desires of the people. And I would like to see people who are on the left who are more rooted in their Jewish identity in regards to not accepting foreign influence at the expense of their identity. That's the issue that I have. And I think that if anything, let me just finish my sentence. If anything, first of all, this opinion that I have is all about owning your identity. That's what I have. And so if that's fascist, then I've never read that in any fascist material that I've had to read in political science or history. That's not at all my intention. And I'm sorry if you misunderstood me. I'm just saying that if we were connecting to, as individuals, like as Palestinians and Israelis, if we were connecting with one another authentically, and we were connecting with one another in regards to the dual identity that we have, the identity that we do share, I think that would be much more powerful. So that is language of love, and that is language of peace. If anything, to say that because I oppose the opinions of the other side, that I'm a hater, that's me being critical of other parties, and that's what democracy is all about. So that's a right that I am exercising on the daily.
It's fantastic, but you don't say they're traitors. When you say they're traitors,
I didn't call anyone a traitor.
Yes, you did, and it's on recording, so it's very easy to prove that.
Okay.
If I might interject here before we get lost to the specific point, I think it is quite easy to see that for both of you, it is difficult to reach consensus, both regarding language, regarding political positions, how you view Israel, but also how you view Palestinians. And from my outside perspective, I can also see a divide like that in Israeli society in general, like you could probably say about any society. But as a final question, I'd like to, for each of you to just draw a picture of what would be your ideal outcome for this election tonight. Of course, set in the realistic or in the world we live in, but really your personal best solution, basically.
Roy, would you like to start?
As I said, like on our conversation before this evening, I don't have really like an ideal solution for this election. I think we're living on borrowed time. I do hope that the extreme right will not be part of the next government. I think that's like having those dangerous people holding the wheel is super dangerous and will result in violence. So my best outcome will be us being able to maintain a coalition without them. But I don't think that the next Israeli government, no matter who will be the prime minister, is going to address the issue of Jews and Palestinians. This is not in the cards. This is not something that the next government is going to deal in a positive way. And the only thing it might do is exacerbate the situation.
So I think that, Lisa, didn't you ask what we would like to see, like what the ideal situation would be? Or did I misunderstand?
Yes, I said your personal best outcome, but
Right. Okay.
rooted in the
Right.
world as we have it. Not, I want there to be, I don't know, flying unicorns, but the world we have. The ideal outcome of this very complicated situation.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, obviously the ideal outcome would be a government prioritize peace, and that would prioritize the rights of every individual here within the country, and allow them to be fully represented. But honestly, I would like to see a different government altogether. I would like to see a government that brings, Judea and Samaria back into the fold, which allows Palestinians to leave the Palestinian Authority and to choose if they would like to come live within Israel, which I think is an aspiration that just about everyone in Judea and Samaria, every Palestinian is seeking to be a part of, and that it should be a reality that empowers them and a reality that allows them to be fully integrated in a way which obviously will need to incorporate full education, which promotes love and promotes advancement and provides them amazing job opportunities and allows them to be part of the economic sector in a strong way. Through economic alliances, we can achieve amazing things. But I also think that I hope that it's a government that will also continue to prioritize the relationships that we have with the neighboring Arab countries that we have in the Middle East. I think that that's very important, and that it has a strong backing, because no matter what solution will be put in place, I know that there will not be support from the international community. I know that there will be voices that will be strongly opposed to it. And so I know that whatever reality we face, whatever reality we live in, we need a strong international leader as well. But essentially unity, like unity within the government, which is authentic, is what's required. True leadership is what is required. So that's the ideal utopian reality I would like to see, but it's difficult with the leaders that we have, with the cards, as Roy said, the cards that we have in our hands. It's difficult to see that happening. But Israel has been a place of miracles, so who knows? Anything
I'm sure you
happen.
have. Sorry, thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm sure you have a comment, Roy, especially perhaps on the part that everybody wants to come to Israel.
I would like to see less unity and more diversity. I think this is like in a country that has so many groups and so many people, I would like to actually not see everybody come together, but people deciding and having the option of running their different perspective and ideologies, but doing it in a shared society that allows everybody to have a political voice and human rights.
That's the unity that I'm talking about. So that's I'm happy you
so
put
we
that
can
into
agree
words.
on that. So we can agree on that.
So we apparently did manage to find at least a little bit consensus at the end of this conversation. I think there were, especially now in the last 10 minutes, a lot more topics that we could also do another talk on, like one state, two state. That's what I heard in there a little bit. But we will have to continue this conversation on another day. But I really hope that each of you would like to join me again, to come back on perhaps someone in the future and discuss this a bit more. Until then, I thank both of you very much. I think the election offices are closing in, I'm bad calculating the time difference, but I think in 2 hours. Yeah. 1 hour. See that? Yeah, bad at calculating. So in 1 hour, and I think whatever we wake up to tomorrow, it will be highly interesting. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Have a great night. Take care.
You too.